It's national meets regional. Welcome to Sidewalks Entertainment, the long-running celebrity, music, and art series. Join us now for an exciting new path to celebrity interviews, music, rising talents, and much, much more.
I'd like to welcome to Sidewalks Entertainment, Emmy Award-winning actor, Guy Pearce. Hi, Guy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi. Pleasure, Lori. Thanks.
Now, prior to today's interview, I recently watched your music video for your song, Truth. Now, that was the first time I have ever heard you sing, and you have such a great voice.
Oh, thank you very much.
I mean, great song, great voice. No, I literally was blown away, like my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my gosh, she sounds amazing.
Cheers.
Now,
well, I love making music. I mean, whenever I can, in between jobs, I'm always trying to record music, so that's my pastime.
Yeah, well, I did read that that's, music is your passion next to acting. Now, I would imagine that maybe earlier in your career, you might have came to a fork in the road where you had to choose which you wanted to be your main focus. I mean, you're an amazing actor, and obviously you're a great singer too. So how did you ultimately choose which one you wanted to focus on?
Well, funnily enough, I was on a television show when I was 18, 19, and there were a couple of actors on that show who went on to become some of the biggest pop stars that Australia and England has known, in Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan. And at the time, I was making music myself, and I would mention that I was making music, and lots of people would cringe and say, "Oh, not another soap star who's going to release a single." And I would sort of go, "No, no, 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 no." So I sort of buried this music thing. I mean, I didn't bury it as far as me doing it. I kept doing it, and I had a studio at home, and I still do. But I just didn't make it public. And so I just thought, oh, well, that's just the nature of the beast. I'll just continue to work as an actor, and I just won't ever release my music. That's fine. And then years later, somebody, gave me some advice and said, you're not doing yourself any favours by keeping this music to yourself. You really should sort of start thinking about releasing it. So hence the reason why 30 years later, I started to bring it out in like 2014. And then last year I brought another record out. So yeah, it's nice to finally kind of get it out there. And not that I expect it to do anything, but just as a creative outlet is really satisfying.
No, you're great. And what's crazy is, we see your amazing characters that you've played. You would never have guessed, I would never have guessed that you would have such an amazing voice. So cheers to that. I'm glad that you came out with an album.
Well, thank you.
Now, speaking of characters and roles that you've played, I imagine that you've gone, when you look back on all of the scripts and the roles that have come your way, has there ever been a role that you turned down that you later regretted passing up?
I don't think there's any that I've regretted that I'd turned down. There've certainly been things that I've come close to getting and really wanted and didn't get. And of course I look at the finished film and think, oh, that would have been so good to do. But usually, like The Talented Mr. Ripley was one, for example. I really, really wanted to play that role. But of course, I'm kind of in awe of Matt Damon anyway. So I think, well, he's pretty great. So it makes sense. But, once things really started to work and I was sort of working a lot, I get that there are lots of things that come and go, and some you don't get to do and some you do get to do. And, I tend to be fairly open-minded about that and not get too sort of hung up on things. And, I can be disappointed if I don't get something, but I've certainly had the chance to play lots of great roles too. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I stay fairly grounded about it, I think.
Yeah, well, speaking of great roles, I mean, I loved you in Time Machine. That was actually one of my favorite romance films. And then Iron Man 3. I really liked your whole getup in that with your blonde hair and everything. But I think out of all your characters, the one that really stood out to me, and you might be surprised because he was a villain, was your character in Lawless. That you had such a great performance in that movie.
Well, and it was written really well. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. But it really was written very well. The character written by Nick Cave, who adapted the book, The Wettest County. It was just so clear on the page to me how this guy should look and just his sort of attitude. So I always rely. I mean, if the great writing's there, you rely on it. Obviously, if it's not, you have to sort of cobble something together yourself, which always makes me nervous. I never feel as authentic when I'm doing that. Whereas if it jumps off the
was
page,
so
then
good.
half the work's done. You know? Yeah.
Now, I would imagine that playing a villain like that, there's a level of intensity that you experience as the actor playing the character. What's it like to play characters like that, like villains that are so ruthless like that?
It's interesting because I'm always aware of what we want the effect to be on the audience. I'm always aware that, the audience needs to be repelled by this person or be hurt by this person in this, because usually you are causing or inflicting pain upon the protagonist, So it's just all part of the nature of the story that's being told. You have your sort of positive elements and your negative elements, and whether I'm playing the protagonist or the antagonist, they all need to be successful. They all need to work and be believable. It's fun, playing characters who are quite sort of extreme in their derangement, I guess. But it needs to feel authentic and not just that I'm just playing somebody who's maniacal and, it depends on the piece, of course, as well. But it can be fun. Playing a character like that in Lawless was great because he's so sort of extreme and kind of out of his depth and so judgmental. I love playing characters who are really judgmental.
Now, you've taken on the lead role of Ebenezer Scrooge in the retelling of A Christmas Carol on FX. Now, I don't even know where to begin. I was just like, wow, this is really dark. It really is. What caught your interest in this film and what made you want to take on this role?
Well, it was that. It's a good point that you make, that it is really dark. And I think in light of the fact that there have been so many versions made before, the idea of doing something where Steve Knight, our writer, and Nick Murphy, our director, really wanted to mine the sort of the really difficult and confronting stuff, which I think exists in the original source material, but it's kind of in between the lines. So for them, it was about going, let's just look at what the darkest version of this could be, the most confronting version of this. We still get to the redemptive end. We still get to that lovely kind of spirit that, we all know about A Christmas Carol. But I just think it mines some topics that perhaps are glossed over or ignored or they don't even go there in other versions. So that's what I found appealing about it. The writing is it's really evocative. Steve Knight's a beautiful writer and it was just great stuff to work with.
Well, what's interesting is my first impression of it was, so it seems like you're looking at the man that all the other ones were based on. That's how it came across to me. Like, it seemed more realistic compared to the other versions of it. So that was great work with that.
Well, and thank you. And one of the things they also wanted to do was actually create a younger Scrooge, someone who's more robust, a businessman who's quite confident and has a real swagger about him, as opposed to a wizened up old man who's afraid of life. So that was a different take as well. And on some level, it's not necessarily more contemporary, but it probably feels more contemporary as well because we're so conscious of, business people who are successful and they brag about how successful they are, and that's something to sort of be admired, apparently. So it's a sort of a quality that we see a lot in this day and age. And it can be an ugly quality. So I think that was something that they wanted to tap into.
Now, this adaptation is described as a darker and humanistic take on the beloved tale. Now, what was it like to portray this version of Ebenezer Scrooge?
It was really enjoyable. One of the first things that we shot for me and one of the first things that we see in the story is obviously his business partner, Jacob Marley, has died and has been gone now for a year. And one of the things we get to see in Scrooge is that he misses his business partner. They were very close friends and he's actually very sort of sad about and melancholy about, this friend of his that is no longer with him. So, I think there are ways in which we keep the audience on side with Ebenezer Scrooge, and it's that balance, between having the audience feel for him, as well as then seeing some of the sort of terrible behaviour that he and his business partner Marley have exhibited in the past. So I think I love that. I love playing with what the audience wants, how much they want to be with you or not. And I think that's probably what enables us to find the redemption in the end anyway, is that if we feel for Scrooge when we can relate to him, then we will kind of accept the redemption, even if he's been horrible along the way in his life too. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty much, that's what Scrooge is all about, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. It's the opportunity to look back at his life and be faced with, various behaviours, and sort of be given the chance to kind of change his ways. But the interesting thing about Scrooge is he makes some good points. He also sort of says, why are we only nice to each other one day of the year? Why can't we be nice to each other all year?
Yes.
There's hypocrisy out there, everybody. So he's kind of throwing it back at us, the public, as well, And he does make some good points. He's cynical, but you get where it comes from.
Now, one last question before we run out of time. This is actually a fan question from Becky right here in San Francisco. She asks, what's a movie genre that you haven't done yet or would like to do more of?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't done many romantic comedies. It's not really my forte. But it would be quite...
I would love to see you in a rom-com. I would.
It would be quite fun, I'd love to do something with Cameron Diaz or somebody, I mean, I love Cameron, she's great. So it would be quite fun. Whether I could do it successfully, I'm not sure, but it would be quite fun, I think.
Well, wonderful, wonderful work. And, just a side note, when I heard it was you that was playing Ebenezer, I was like, oh, it's going to be good.
Oh, well, thank you.
So, wonderful, wonderful work. And unfortunately, we are out of time. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Absolute pleasure, Lori. Thank you. Good to talk to you as well. Give my love to San Francisco.
Absolutely. And you're due for a visit, so come visit us sometime.
I am due for a visit. Absolutely.
That was Guy Pearce from A Christmas Carol on FX. Thanks again, Guy. You take care. Bye.
For more full-length celebrity interviews, visit sidewalkstv.com.